Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, this presentation is being recorded. My name is Brian Seymour. I am the program manager for the Made in Baltimore program. We are a program of the Baltimore Development Corporation, which is our city's economic development agency. The work of Made in Baltimore is aimed at supporting and promoting makers and manufacturers here in Baltimore City and helping to grow the buy local movement in the Baltimore region. We offer business development services and resources to small batch manufacturers, makers, as well as retailers. We do this through programs like this workshop series, Tools of the Trade. And today I'm super excited. We are joined by Casey McKeel to discuss QuickBooks for small businesses. Casey McKeel is a business consultant and accountant specializing in work for cooperatives and small businesses. She co-founded Thread Coffee in 2012, but later completed a Masters of Accountancy at George Washington University. So clap it up for that master. And now works as the controller at Obran Cooperatives. She has worked with a number of cooperatives and small businesses to develop bookkeeping systems to help them achieve their goals. She has many years of experience working with QuickBooks as a tool in these environments and enjoys sharing that knowledge to help business owners take control of their finances. We ask that you please remain muted through this presentation. We would love to see your faces. If you're comfortable, this is a safe learning space, so there's no such thing as a bad question. When you have a question, please quietly add it to the chat and it will be answered during scheduled Q&A segments. Do not feel pressured to keep up with note-taking. We will be discussing a lot. Again, this is being recorded and this will be posted on our website at a later date. And with that, thank you to our parent agency, Baltimore Development Corporation. Thank you to you all for giving us your time. And with that, I will hand things over to Casey.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining, and hi to all the familiar faces that I see and names. So let's see, let me get this screen. All right. Can everyone see my presentation slide? Cool. So I wanted to see if before we get started, there was a way to see how many people actually are using QuickBooks currently versus those who aren't. Is there, if Brian, if you have an idea of how we're going to do this, but if there's like, yes, exactly, the little hands, if you can do that, if you are currently using QuickBooks, I would love to see. All right. Okay. All right. So I want to make this presentation as useful as possible. So I have, a format laid out, but I also want everyone to feel comfortable asking questions as we go and, really tailoring it to your specific needs. So, all right. So I know that there was another recent Tools of the Trade a while back that Gross Mendelsohn did, accounting and budgeting for small business owners. So I'm not going to go too much into a lot of things that they already covered because you can just go revisit their presentation online if you weren't able to be a part of it. But they went over a lot of issues around double entry accounting, cash versus accrual accounting, and just in general, what different financial statements exist. So even though we won't be getting into a lot of that today, we will be sort of addressing some of these topics. But if you want to learn more in depth about any of those things, you can always refer back to their presentation, which is on the Tools of the Trade workshop series. So just a little plug for that. So what is QuickBooks? In short, QuickBooks is accounting software. It's the most popular bookkeeping software that is out there. And there's both online and desktop, although the most popular version now is QuickBooks Online, and that's what we're going to be discussing today, especially as QuickBooks is now starting to phase out their desktop software and move everyone to the online platform. And essentially, QuickBooks is what helps small businesses manage their finances. It is meant for looking at accounting, which is referred to as the language of business. So it's basically, a really useful software to help you with a number of different features. So some of the most popular things that QuickBooks does, it integrates with your bank account and allows you to import transactions daily direct from your bank account or credit card. You can track amounts owed to vendors by creating bills. You can track amounts due from your customers by creating invoices. You can set up budgets. You can reconcile bank accounts, which allows you to essentially just make sure everything that has actually happened in real life is also what's happening in your book. You can generate all the different types of reports you need. So for yourself, for getting, an understanding of how your business is doing, how, how you're going to plan strategically to grow in the future. And also when, say, you're applying for loans or grants or things like that, I know people are always asking for your financial statements, and QuickBooks really easily can generate all those for you. Some of the additional features it can do, it can also provide payroll services and 1099s if you have contractors. Oh, and much more. So when you are setting up QuickBooks, one of the first things that it asks you to do is to choose a plan. And I know this is one of the most common questions I get is, which plan should I choose? And a lot of times people will get sort of held up at this step, just being overwhelmed by not knowing sort of where to start. QuickBooks often runs a number of different promotions where you can sign up, for 50% off for 3 months or 20% off for the first year, all these different things. It's kind of always changing, but so the prices are never really consistent. But typically I say that the Essentials plan, which is kind of like the step 2, or the Plus, is really all you're ever going to need. But the most reassuring thing is that at any point in time, you can always upgrade. It's super easy. They make it very easy to upgrade. So you can always get started also with just the most basic plan. And as you realize that if you realize that you want more features, like being able to actually pay bills or have additional users, or if you actually want to be able to add these extra features we'll discuss later, like tracking like classes and locations, you can always upgrade when the time comes and add those features. So it makes it a little bit less intimidating to get it started. Like if you sign up for that simple start, that most basic plan, you're not locked into that forever. You can always upgrade without losing the information and the work that you've already done. So that's I just like to put that out there so people know. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to just do a kind of like a live demo of how to set up a QuickBooks account and some of the basic, best practices, and then the different features that we have. So as we're going through this, if there's anything that you see, that you've encountered, that you have questions about, just literally, chime in and ask questions as we go. And I'm happy to sort of, address them on this spot and like demo that. So let me get to this here. So I basically created kind of like a fake account to show you how this works. So when you sign up for QuickBooks, typically, so there's a number of different sort of versions of what your dashboard and platform will look like, but the most common one is going to be this one that I'm showing you here. And it's going to, once you sign up, it's going to take you through a number of different screens of sort of this like setup checklist. It'll have you like work your way through things, and sometimes it'll do a number of things for you. But I actually recommend kind of skipping through that and as much as you can, and because you can always return to it and you can always do other tutorials, but there's certain ways that setting up certain things first are easier, because the other thing is it will try to sell you additional services that you might not actually need. And so sometimes just like skipping through the intro screens first, and then you can always go back if there's things you want to add. So I like to start by connecting your bank account. And one of the other things that QuickBooks provides, so when you come here, this is like your main dashboard page. On the left-hand side are all your different, options of things you can do. The obvious place you would think to look is banking. And essentially this takes you to a page where QuickBooks wants to get you to apply for a QuickBooks bank account. If that's something that you want to do, obviously it's an option. I personally have never used it, but I do have some clients who have. But it's not really anything that you need to do, and you certainly don't need to apply for it in order to use QuickBooks. So that's another sort of common misconception, is sometimes people will come to this page and think, oh, do I have to have a QuickBooks, bank account in order to use QuickBooks? And you absolutely don't. So to actually get to the place where you link your own bank account, you're going to come over to this column on the left-hand side and go to the bookkeeping tab. And then under bank transactions, this is basically where you're going to have the feed for any accounts that you link in QuickBooks. And so this is where every day, whenever you click this update button, it's going to import all the transactions that have occurred in your bank account here. And this is essentially like importing your bank statement in real time. And so this is where you get to sort of review all the transactions that have occurred, figure out how you want to classify them, meaning, say, letting QuickBooks know this was an expense, this was revenue, this was money, from a farmer's market, or this was money from a talk that I did, or whatever. This is the screen where you'll be able to actually do all of that. There are other ways that you can add transactions without, but this is by far one of the biggest perks of the software. And one of the easiest ways is to link those accounts and have all your transactions imported manually or automatically. And so it's pretty easy to link your bank account. So I already have one linked here, but to link one, or if say you have two bank accounts, maybe you have a business checking and a business savings, or if you have a business credit card, all of that you can link from this page here. So again, just you come over here to the bookkeeping tab, and then it's under transactions, and then on bank transactions. So you come over here and you click link account. And then you can choose whatever, you can type in whatever platform here. It'll have you sign in securely, and then it will connect directly to your bank. Sometimes, it can be a little finicky, and you have to try it a few times with like security questions and everything. And if you have multiple users on your bank account, it is most friendly with using the highest sort of like admin on the account. So if you have like 3 different people, whoever is that main admin on your bank account, use that login. Sometimes it'll work with all of them, but sometimes different banks, are going to play nicer with different logins. So then once you do that, it will ask you, when do you want to import transactions starting. And I always recommend start at the beginning of the year. So, for this, I said to start on January 1st. If you operate on a fiscal year and your fiscal year starts on July 1, start importing on July 1. That way that you can kind of really have clean books starting from the full year. And then once you do it, QuickBooks will do its thing, and it will populate this whole section with all of these transactions. And so this is where now you have the ability to begin actually categorizing and everything. But before we do that, one of the things that I like to advise people to do, so once you get your bank account set up, is actually go to your chart of accounts. And if you did the other tools of the trade workshop with Gross Mendelson, they went over sort of like what a chart of account is. But basically, this is where you have all of your different types of revenue, different types of expenses. So those are the main things you would see, on your income statement. And then it also has your different types of liabilities, assets, and equity, which are the three things that you're looking at on a balance sheet. So liabilities, are going to be any types of loans that you have, any upcoming bills that you're going to owe. Assets are going to be things like if you, your different bank accounts and everything, things like that. And then equity is going to be sort of the money that you have put in. Or if, say, you have a delivery vehicle, that's an asset. The loan that you maybe took out to get that delivery vehicle is going to be the liability. And then the difference between those two, that equity that you've earned after paying it off on that's going to be another thing that appears in equity. And so getting your chart of accounts set up before you start using QuickBooks is going to be helpful, just to make the whole process easier for classifying things. And so you can, still on that bookkeeping tab here, you're going to just go to chart of accounts. And QuickBooks actually creates a number of these accounts for you in advance, which is great. So typically you're going to have a number of the things that you need, at least balance sheet wise, already on here. If you have business loans, you can add them at this time. But a lot of the things are actually like created for you. So, and they give you examples that you can use and edit as well. So these are the different types of assets that they do. So any sort of, if you have loans that you have given out to others, that would appear here. Accounts receivable, those will sort of be, we'll come back to that in a little bit. If you have different fixed assets like furniture, machinery and equipment, those are things that will appear on here. So say that one of the most common ones that I would see with small businesses is if you buy a laptop, you might choose to keep that as an asset, which essentially just means that it's going to appear on your balance sheet rather than your income statement. So it's going to be something that you expense over time as it depreciates, rather than expensing it outright when you buy it. The reason people might do something like this is to, one, give you an asset on your balance sheet, which looks good for certain types of, investment, or if you're trying to get loans. And it also allows you to not lower your net income by so much, because you're not taking it as a business expense all at once. You're going to be taking it out little by little. And that's where these things would appear in your chart of accounts. Similarly, like if you have a delivery vehicle, that would be in this cap. But so most of your balance sheet accounts are already going to be covered on here. When you link your bank account, it automatically puts it on your chart of accounts. So here, this is, the business bank account that I had linked, and it always gives you, the balance that you have in QuickBooks, meaning what you have added transaction wise and what that has brought your balance to on the actual books. And then it also gives you your bank account balance. So it's directly communicating with my bank. And you want these two things to match. When they don't match, it usually means that you have some additional transactions to add, or something's off and you need to sort of investigate further. But scrolling down the different types of accounts that you have, you'll see down here, we're getting into equity. So these are things if you had common stock, or opening balance equity would be something like if you had $1,000 in the bank account when you first started, or something like that. And then the real place where it's going to be useful to add a few things when you're getting started is really just in income, cost of goods, and expenses. So these are where you're going to have, you have the ability to really tailor it to your specific business. So it gives you very broad categories like sales, or just in general, cost of goods sold, supplies and materials. But here's where you can actually really build it out in a way that is helpful for you. So when creating these categories, the biggest thing to think about is what information do you want to know? So, say 6 months has gone by, you have made a ton of different purchases. Some of those were cost of goods. So the actual raw materials that you bought in order to produce a product. So say that, you're making, I don't know, skincare products. And so all of the, the different essential oils or other things that, also packaging, things like that, that you're buying in order to actually produce that final product that you're going to sell, those are all going to fall under cost of goods. And having different categories for those might be really useful to you. So you're like, I know I spent all this money on the actual raw materials, but it would be really nice to know how much was spent on packaging versus, the actual items that went into the product. And that's where you can actually label them as those different things. So when you are creating different categories, just come up here to where it says new. And let's say that, I don't know, say that you are making ice cream. And so you want to be able to separate out the dairy that you purchase for this versus maybe like dry goods or something like that. So it's literally whatever you find most useful to you. So you can just name it. You just type in your name here, and then you're going to select what the different category is. So this is going to be a type of expense. And then you're going to come through under here. Actually, sometimes it doesn't give you everything. There you go. So this little search feature here, if anything isn't appearing right away, you can always type in what you're looking for. So this is going to be a cost of goods sold. So save that. And then it will appear here. And say one of the other ones you wanted to know was like the dry goods. Similarly, you want that to be cost of goods sold. And then you just add them. So then this just adds whatever categories you want. And so say some of the other things you want to make sure that you have are just regular expenses like rent. And that's just going to be a normal expense. So you can add that. Here. And then other things would be then thinking about the revenue that you're bringing in. So different income accounts. So say you want to be able to run a report and differentiate revenue based on market sales. So things you sell when you do, maybe pop-up markets or farmers markets or things like that. You can create that as its own category. So you'd say market sales. It's going to be income and sales of product. So you can have, different categories here, but if it's you're going to a market and actually selling the product, sales of product income is going to be the right category for that. And then you have market sales. And then say, maybe you also have online sales and you want to be able to, track the difference between, then you can create a category for that. And then similarly, that's sales of product. And then say maybe like you also have, a third category, which is, maybe it's like events that you do where you're actually doing, you're not selling your product, but maybe you're talking about your product, or you're teaching how to make it or something like that. And that's going to be different than sales of product. So that would be like, just, you can put it as sales. So it's like an actual service. And what, the benefit of having these different categories rather than just calling everything sales is it helps you see where you're growing. So it gives you the opportunity when you are creating reports to say, okay, we're doing really well in our online sales, but market sales, month to month have actually been declining. And that allows you to start thinking about, what's causing that, what are different ways to focus your growth and things like that. So once you add some of the things into the chart of accounts, you'll actually go in and be able to start categorizing. But one of the things I like to point out is, if you haven't already, set up a business bank account. One of the most important things you're going to need to do when it comes to, time to file your taxes, and also just in terms of learning, about how much you're actually making and how much it's actually costing you, is you really want to have, your business and your personal expenses separate. And the easiest way to do that is to have a business bank account so that you can just have, your one card that you use whenever you're out buying things for the business, and separately, the place where you're depositing any sort of revenue for the business. And then anything that's your own personal stuff, just use a different card, keep it in a different account. This will save you so much of a headache when it comes time to tax season, and also just in terms of learning how you're doing in your business. So that is a big thing I like to stress. And that way you are also only importing the transactions into QuickBooks that are specifically geared towards your business and not your personal expenses. The other thing, of course, save your receipts. One of the beautiful things that QuickBooks offers is there's a couple of different ways you can actually save a digital copy of your receipts directly in QuickBooks. So if you're the type of person who is going to put that receipt in your pocket, it's going to go through the washer, you're never going to see it again, or it's going to be in that grocery bag and then, get lost forever, just take a picture of it on your phone. And you can either use the app that QuickBooks actually has to upload it into the app then, or you can, email it to yourself or whatever, and then later just like add it into QuickBooks. But it's a feature that automatically comes with QuickBooks. So I always encourage people to use it. That way you have your receipts if and when you need them. Otherwise, if you like saving the hard copy, get a shoebox, get a folder, whatever it is, and just throw it all in there. The other thing that I like to stress, and we'll look at sort of where we can do this next, but is tracking the checks that you write. So QuickBooks makes this easy. But sometimes people, you write a bunch of checks and not everyone either receives them if you're mailing them out, or not everyone cashes them right away. And you might think that you have $1,000 in the bank, but you forgot about that $500 check that you wrote to someone who hasn't actually cashed it yet. And this is going to be just really crucial in terms of tracking your cash flow and knowing how much money you actually have available. The other thing is to track upcoming bills, and QuickBooks has a feature for this so that you're able to, if that your insurance renews every year and that happens in March, having that just in there as a thing, as a reminder that you're going to need to budget for. That's something that's going to be really helpful. So let's go back here. So just to give a little demo on how to actually add transactions. And I see there's a number of things in the chat, so I just want to make sure if anyone has questions. Okay, someone said, do you recommend uploading all receipts or only ones over a specific amount and retaining all physical receipts? I think that honestly, just save all receipts. You don't necessarily need to, I think just pick a method that works for you. So whether that is saving them, in a folder on your desktop, on your computer, or an actual folder at your desk, or using, the feature in QuickBooks to save them. But it is good to save all of them. That is what, an accountant is always going to like tell you to do. What's what technically you're supposed to do. So just figure out like the system that works best for you. Everyone's different in that regard. And whatever is going to help you make sure that you have them all, do that. So, for example, when you are in this transactions page where you actually are adding things in QuickBooks, there's going to be this little feature here where it says add attachment. And so when I'm sitting down, say maybe I pick one day a week where I'm going to sit down and do my bookkeeping, I would then, go to my email, find my bill from Comcast, or maybe log in and pull it up and just take a screenshot and add it right here. And then now it's forever saved in QuickBooks. I don't need to worry about it. And if you sort of add them all as you go, as you're adding all the transactions on this page, it's sort of a good way to ensure that you're not missing anything. The other thing is there's a place right here where if you can upload them from your computer into this receipts tab, or you can forward them from email. So this is the other thing, is you can set this up to actually have things come directly from your email when you get them. Obviously upload from Google Drive. And this is where they're going to appear if you use the QuickBooks app on your phone and take pictures of them on your phone. So, whatever process works, I think is, totally up to you. So, back to this page. So here's where the actual bookkeeping takes place. So once you have your bank account linked and you have all your transactions coming in here, this is where you're going to actually go when you want to add them. So for example, this Comcast example, this is going to be, utilities, and internet TV services. So again, like QuickBooks already has a ton of different things in here for you already. So things like this, I didn't even have to add this. It was already in here. And you just fill it out. So it's good to always fill in this vendor column. QuickBooks is, has like smart capabilities where it will read the bank details. So what this is actually is basically what you would see on your bank statement of what the transaction was. It reads it and it guesses that the vendor's name, obviously was Comcast, and it auto populates it here. However, it doesn't always, so sometimes it won't even have a guess. Sometimes it'll have a guess. And this is where you want to do that. And what this will allow you to do is later when you're running reports, if you want to see, okay, wow, we spent $500 last month on utilities. What was that to? You can actually click on that and you will actually be able to see who you paid and to what amount. There's also different ways you can look it up. So it's always good to fill in this vendor or customer section. So once you have this, the vendor name here, you have your category. So again, category is like, what is the actual expense? You'll just come over here and you'll click confirm. And one of the other things it does is it sort of gets smarter over time. So it starts to recognize things. So it was like, okay, the last time you added a Comcast expense, that was internet and TV services. So it automatically suggests it of how I should add this transaction. And so again, just come over here, click confirm. And oftentimes when you do the same thing over and over, a little box like this will pop up, which allows you to make it a rule. And essentially that's just saying, is every time we see on your bank statement the word Comcast come up, is it always going to be internet and TV services? Personally, I don't use rules that much, but if you wanted to, you would just say, yep, create rule. And all that does is it just is going to inform the options that it's suggesting on this screen. And so this screen again this is your bank feed. These are all the things that have occurred in your day-to-day transactions. But when they're on this screen, on this bank transaction screen, they haven't yet been added to your books. So when you go through and you do this process of categorizing them and deciding what each expense was, that is when they actually become a part of your books, which means they're now on what is called your bank register. And this is what actually is used to then make up the different reports and figure out what your revenue and expenses are. And your bank register, you can access. So from this screen, just up here, go to bank register. And what you're going to see here is all the transactions that you've added and categorized. So we just added those 2 Comcast transactions, and now they are officially a part of my books. So I had, $500 in the bank when I connected my bank account. I had these 2 transactions. So similarly, like say I realized, Comcast actually wasn't utilities. That was actually a purchase I made to buy a new router, and I want to change it. You can come to this screen on your bank register, and then this actually gives you the opportunity to change what you've added. So as you're going through this, you never have to worry that like once something's added, it can't be changed. It's very easy to just come to the screen, edit. And similarly, let's say I'm like, what, this is wrong. I can also delete it. And it's not gone forever. It's just going to be back on that banking page, which to get back to, we just go to this screen, and then here it is again, and I can choose if I want to change what it's added as and add it as a new category. Similarly, here it is going through and it's kind of like pulling the vendor name. So let's say there is something where it doesn't know the vendor name yet. So Zoom, right? It's, you would just type it in, and if it's not already added, all you have to do is click add. And now you have a new vendor added. And if you wanted to add different details, so, you can do the minimum, which is just put in the name of the vendor, which is Zoom, or say you want to actually have more information here. So say this is a vendor where you're going to a farm and you're buying produce for something that you're making, and you actually want to have their contact information all just saved in one place. You can type in their address here. You can maybe say you have an agreement with them where you have to pay them net 15 terms. It allows you to actually like put all this information in, which is really useful. And then you can just save it. And then similarly here, it's guessing, okay, is Zoom software and apps? It is. So you would click confirm. And then let's see. So say that you had, we're going to sort of make up one of these. It was, say that I paid somebody $300 to come and help me at an event. And that means that they are actually going to be a 1099 contractor. So one of the things QuickBooks sometimes will do is it will try to guess what something is, but sometimes it's wrong. And it will say like record as transfer. Oftentimes that is not actually what it is. And you just want to come over here and correct it. The categorize option is where it's going to allow you to actually choose the category of what it's supposed to be and add your vendor name. So let's say that, I paid somebody to come and assist with something. And since they're a 1099 contractor, you can, and let's say I want to use this at the end of the year to actually file all my 1099s for me. I don't want to pay an accountant to do it. I'm only going to have a couple contractors throughout the year, and QuickBooks has the feature to do it, and it's affordable. So just on this screen, if you start tracking, click track payment for 1099s, And if you have 1099 workers, which again, that's like a contractor where you're not paying, if they're not a W-2 employee, so you're not paying payroll taxes for them, it's somebody who you pay on and off to just do something. You have a contract of like a fee that you're going to pay them. Technically, you want to always be sure that you're getting a W-9 from them, and that's going to have all their different, business information. And one of the things you're going to need to have their address, phone number, I think emails nowadays on that form as well. And then most importantly, their social security number, or if they have an LLC that they're using, then that would be like their business ID number. And if you put it all in here on the screen from the very first time you pay them, then you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the year until it's time to file 1099s. I like to stress this as a very helpful feature because a lot of times people will be caught up in the moment and you're just paying somebody. Maybe, somebody came to help out at the market. You're like, okay, here's your $200 for today. I'll get that that W-9 from you later. And then maybe you don't see them again for several months. Suddenly it's tax season and you're having to scramble and call up all of your contractors and get their information, and it can be a real headache. So if you just do it from the very first time you pay them and enter that information in QuickBooks, then it's stored, it's secure, and you don't have to worry about it. So it makes it really easy to be able to do that here on this screen. Let's see. Okay. I get a lot of payments via check. I electronically deposit those into my bank, but the bank doesn't have a place to write the memo for which check is for what. It takes a while for the bank to process the check and then another while for that. By that time, I've forgotten who submitted which check for what, and I have to dig through my folder to reconcile. Is there a better way? Okay. To clarify your question, are you saying, so when people are paying you for something, not like your checks that you're writing out, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. Yes. So there is a really great way to do that in QuickBooks. And that is a good segue. So over here, so I guess just to kind of like wrap up this sort of transactions thing, this is where you're going to add, everything that happens in the bank. And the next sort of feature of QuickBooks is that you can invoice your customers directly from QuickBooks, or you can, even if you don't want to necessarily use that feature, what you can do is track, the money that's coming in. So when you go to, you can either do it via this customers and leads or get paid and pay. And so vendors is going to be, anybody that you owe money to, money going out for different things. But invoices is a great feature where you can invoice your customer directly. So say that you sell ice cream, in a cafe buys 100, pints of ice cream from you, and you need to send them an invoice. You can create these easily from this page. And it's really customizable. The invoice, what's nice is on this screen, it's actually going to show you exactly what it looks like. You can edit any of your, business name here, perhaps maybe your business LLC name is one thing, but you have a doing business, a DBA, that you use that is different.
Wow.
You can edit that here. You can also add a logo, which is really nice. So you can
log them back in because it logged.
Yeah, you can add a logo, and then you can set up all of the other information here. So, when you negotiate contracts with any of your customers, oftentimes you'll set up terms in advance, and it lets you just select this, which is nice because then it automatically calculates the date for you. So if I'm invoicing them today, and I know they have net 15 terms, I don't have to, look at the calendar and figure out when that is. It'll just automatically populate it. You can also say due on receipt, whatever the different things are. QuickBooks will automatically assign invoice numbers just in chronological order for you. But if you wanted to edit them and you have specific invoicing numbers that you want to use, you can change that here. And then you're going to go down here, you're going to add your products and services. So these are things that you may have already added in your chart of accounts, but if you didn't, it's totally fine. You can just add it directly from this. So let's say you are doing the ice cream thing. So say ice cream pints. That's typically going to be, you know, a flat rate. Say those are $10 each. And this is where you're actually creating that product or that service. And, you know, if it was something like, oh, this is actually a consulting service, you know, you click service here and then similarly just set up whatever it is. And, you know, say you wanted to also be more specific here, you could be like strawberry ice cream, chocolate ice cream, you could have the different things. And then, so it also, you know, you have this flat rate option, but you also have the option if you wanted to do units and quantity. So it gives you a ton of different options to categorize on the invoice. And then when you scroll down, you get to choose how they pay you. So there's the ability with QuickBooks to take credit cards, Apple Pay, bank transfers, a number of different options. And the setup process for that is easy. QuickBooks does take a fee for that. And they have that information in the settings. It's more, you know, for accepting a credit card than it is for a bank transfer. But if you want to, you know, choose which way they can pay, you can actually do that all from this screen. So say maybe you don't want to give them the option to pay with a credit card because it takes a higher fee, you can turn that feature off here. If you don't want to give them any sort of online options for payment because you want them to pay via check, you can just turn these off. And then, you know, you can type in a note about that here if you want to. You can also add general notes and you can add attachments. So say maybe this was an invoice that you were sending to your customer for a first draft of a logo that you had created for them, and you wanted to actually add that image here, you can actually attach it directly to this invoice. So when they receive the invoice, they're actually getting, you know, whatever it is that you've prepared for them, a picture of it, or say, you know, you made them a table, you know, and you wanted to show a picture of it because they haven't like come to pick it up yet, but this is the invoice. You can take a picture and add it here. So it basically very customizable. And then you can click print and download, which is nice. So say maybe your thing is going out and you're physically delivering the items. You don't need to email it to them. You want to actually give them a hard paper copy of the invoice. You can print it here. You can click this to create a link, which will, like, if you wanted to send them a personal email, or you can just use the easy, oh, you have to add your customer obviously first. So company name, it's a cafe, whatever, add it here. And then you say review and send. And then it's going to bring you to a screen where it basically creates a draft email template for you. And you can edit it all here. So if you wanted to customize this to say something different than what QuickBooks suggests, you can do that all on this screen. You type in there, it gives you the email that it's going to come from. So you can also edit it here if you wanted to, you know, put your personal, you know, your personal business email instead of the QuickBooks one, have it come from that. And then you type in their email. You can also have it send you a copy. And then you click send invoice and it sends it off to your customer. It'll appear in their email inbox like this. They can click on this to view details, which will give them the breakdown of what you're invoicing them for, their payment options, any attachments you've added, all of that information. And then once you actually have, so this kind of gets to your question about, you know, keeping track of how you receive payment. So say, you know, it's the day that you sit down and you do your bookkeeping, you pulling out all the checks that you received for your different sales. You're going to go and find the different invoices on this screen. So again, that's like, come over to this, get paid and pay, and then invoice. It's going to show you all of the invoices that you've created. And you go over to where it says receive payment. Now, if they have paid you via the QuickBooks link, QuickBooks actually will mark it paid for you and match it to the payment. But if they pay by check, this is where you're going to record it. So type in the payment method as check and then the check number. So this is going to be the most useful way of keeping track of all of this. So you're like, okay, they paid me for invoice 1001 with their check number 987. And then this, so you actually want to change this here. And if you're depositing it straight into your account, your bank account, like you're going to sit here and you're going to do it on your phone. You're going to take a picture of that check when you record it, and it's going to go straight into the bank account. You can say deposit to the bank account. If you aren't going to do that right away, and you're going to take everything to the bank, say on Monday, but you want to get it all recorded, then what you want to do is actually deposit to an account that you're going to set up called undeposited funds. Which, I don't know why it's not, sometimes it doesn't give you the options that you want. Well, you have to go and actually, this one is one of the times when you have to set it up in your chart of accounts if it doesn't automatically have it. But undeposited funds is essentially an account that you're going to create that is going to mean that you have the funds. They're essentially like sitting in a deposit envelope waiting to make their way to the bank. Nowadays, it's so easy to deposit checks via your phone and things like that, that it's actually very easy to just go straight to the bank account. So that's kind of, a nice thing about technology. But yeah, put all of that information right here. Keep track of the reference number of the check, which invoice it's for, and then also the date of the payment. Those things are helpful as well. That way you'll know which check was from which vendor, for which invoice and things like that. Let me check the chat here. All right. I always thought receipt payment would make, okay. All right, so I want to pause since we're at 1 o'clock and just see if anyone has questions so far, or if there's anything in particular you want me to make sure to cover. The other topic I wanted to kind of go over was paying bills via QuickBooks and then just running reports. But I just want to quickly put it out there if anyone has anything that they want to clarify, and feel free to just also like speak up if you don't want to do it in the chat too. Okay. All right, then we will sort of transition next to paying bills. So similarly here you have this get paid and pay. When you come to this tab, go down to where it says pay vendors. And so here's anyone that, I've already added. So, say that I wanted to actually track invoices, say vendors have sent me bills and some of them aren't due. So, let's say that I want to add my rent bills in here in advance. So, some people with commercial spaces, your rent actually might change month to month because maybe the landlord builds in, maybe it's based off of sales, maybe there's the different utility charges built into your rent. And maybe say, you receive that bill on January 15th, it's not due till February 1st, and you don't want to pay it till February 1st, but you want to remember the amount and have it in here and know that it's something that you have upcoming as an amount that will be owed. You can actually create the bill in here to track it. And then you can actually add the different amounts here. So say that your rent is $1,000 a month, and say it does have, the utilities. And you want to add that in here as well. Now you have a bill of how much it's due, and then you can save it, and then it's just going to be on your books, but you can also pay it online. So say that you pay this via check, but like I said, you want to wait till the first of the month when it's actually due to pay it. And then you want to mark it as paid. So say you pay it via check. Sometimes, like I said, you put it in the mail, and maybe the landlord, doesn't cash everything right away. Maybe it sits on their desk for a week or two. Maybe they're out of town, whatever the case may be. And you want to still know, though, that it's paid. And you want to know that that money has technically been spent, even though it hasn't come out of your bank account yet. Here, what you're going to say is you're basically going to mark something as paid. So it came out of your business bank account, and you paid it on the 1st. And then here's reference number is where you would write what check number. So that's a good reminder to you for the check number as well. So it was check, say 102. And then now you know that this money, QuickBooks will mark it as money that has come out of your bank account, so that you don't actually accidentally spend money that you've already budgeted, even if that person hasn't gotten around to cashing it. Now you can just handwrite that check, put it in the mail, mark it here, and be done. But QuickBooks also has features if you wanted to order checks through them, which you can do easily via this link, and then have them, on hand and use your printer to print them out. In which case you would just click print check and it would bring you to the screen, and they make it really simple, step-by-step directions on like how you actually do that. But if it's just like a handwritten check and you're done, you want to say save and close, you can do that. But say that you actually instead wanted to, your landlord says, you know what, actually, cancel that check. I want you to pay me online. You can go here, delete the payment that you've made. And when you do that, it pops back up as you now owe this amount. And QuickBooks has a feature where you can schedule payments directly via QuickBooks to pay online. And setting this up, it's going to take you through this whole like screen of you have to link your bank account and stuff again. If you pay though with a bank account transfer, which you can do easily in here, it's going to have no additional fee to you. If you pay with a credit card in QuickBooks, they do take a fee. It tells you here it's that 2.9% fee. So it's a little high. It adds up definitely over time. So I always encourage people to just do the ACH transfer if you can. But yeah, you click through this and it's going to have you enter the same sort of information that you would when you're connecting your bank account to import transactions. And yeah, it tells you here, just kind of reminder of like, depending on how you're paying it, 2.9% fee, 2.9 free. You can click it here and then you would just go through and follow the setup. So it's nice that there's all the different ways to do this. So the last thing that I want to make sure that we have time to cover is the reports. So when you come to this left-hand side toolbar, you're going to go to Business Overview, and then the report screen. And here is a section where you can like star any of your favorite reports and then make them easy to find here at the top. But you have tons of options of all these different types of reports that you can pull in QuickBooks. And each and every one of them is also customizable. So the most common reports that you're going to normally need to deal with are going to be the balance sheet and the profit and loss, which is also known as their income statement. Statement of cash flows is going to be the other sort of main report, but very few people ask for that one. I know when in the other tools of the trade presentation that Gross Mendelsohn did, they kind of touched on, the difference between the different reports and why that one's less common. But Your two main ones are going to be your balance sheet and your profit and loss. And just as like a refresher for anyone who doesn't know, the profit and loss is going to be a report that looks at how you did financially over a period of time. So, which you get to choose. So it might be, you know, a quarter, the past month, the past year, but it's all of the revenue that came in. So all of the income that you made from doing business, and then all of the expenses that went out. And it's going to give you this net income dollar amount at the bottom, which, you know, hopefully is always positive, but, you know, sometimes it's not. That's reality. But that's going to be your profit and loss statement. And your balance sheet is going to be your financial standing at one moment in time. So that's the difference between these two. This is going to be as of today, on September 8th, what are the balances in all of your different accounts. So these are, again, going to be looking at the assets, the liabilities, and the equity. And it's going to show you, okay, as of today, you had 452 in your bank account. You had an open invoice for that ice cream for $10. So that's where this appears. So that's the other thing that makes it really useful about tracking those invoices in QuickBooks. It puts it on your balance sheet because even though you haven't received that money yet, it does have value because a customer owes you. And if you're trying to get a loan from a bank, all of that money that's out there that is owed to you by customers, it does carry value. It is an, you know, it is an asset. And those assets are things that look really positive to lenders, to investors, things like that. So even if they haven't paid you, you do want to have that represented somewhere to show, hey, yes, I understand that I only, you know, made $1,000 last month, but we have, you know, this big $10,000 contract that's going to be paid next month. And that's where you get to reflect that in telling your financial story, you know, to someone like a bank that's going to give you a loan. Similarly, it gives you your accounts payable. So that's that rent bill. So even though we didn't pay rent, so it doesn't show on the profit and loss statement as an expense, it is an upcoming bill that I have. It is a reality that it's something that I owe, and that's, you know, an upcoming liability. So similarly to if I had a loan already, that's going to appear in this section. The other things are, these are, you know, debts that are owed coming up. And then the bottom part is your net income. So that is a part of what your equity is. And that's directly the number that you saw on the profit and loss statement. So that's what ties these two reports together, is it says, you know, over the past year to date, this is what you know, the difference between your revenue and your expenses gave you this negative $1,000, and it appears here on the balance sheet. So when you are running reports, say that your a lender was like, can you give me a profit and loss by month of how, you know, how you've done so far this year? This is a really nice one because it allows you to compare month to month your different sales. So say that, you know, you had done $1,000 in sales in January, 200 in February, 10,000 in March. You'll actually see all those. And then similarly, you'll have added all of your different expenses in these columns as well. And that allows you to see how you did month to month. And then also you have it all totaled up at the end to show you the full picture for the year. And here's the different sort of areas where you can change these settings. So say that they didn't want to know, you know, through today, but they wanted to know the first 6 months of the year. You know, you can change your dates here before you run it. You can kind of also change which columns you're displaying. And here you can actually, you have tons more like options for how you want to do stuff. Say you actually wanted to show them, say you had like a giant contract that you got with Whole Foods, and the lender that you're talking to really wants to know, what are your sales like with Whole Foods? That's your biggest, you know, customer. So you want to show them and you want to demonstrate how massive like your growth has been. You could actually come here and choose the customer and filter by that customer. And then it would then filter out these numbers to just show sales from that specific customer. And those things can be like in those types of, say, like you have that contract with Whole Foods, but you're trying to now get into Giant. And Giant's like, I want to see how you've done with Whole Foods before we decide whether or not we're going to carry your product. This is where you'd be able to come in and quickly run a report for them that shows, hey, look, in January, yes, Whole Foods only bought, $100 of our product because it was new. But as you can see, month to month, went from $100 in the first month that we worked with them to now we're doing $5,000 a month of sales. And so this is a really useful tool and to the customization feature. One of the last sort of additional features that you have in QuickBooks, and this isn't available in all the versions of QuickBooks, but it is in some of the, like, I think it's the second and third tier on up, is the ability to also add like an additional categorization option. So these are called classes and locations. So if you come up here to this gear icon, this is where you're going to be able to control all the different sort of advanced settings and features. And go to accountant settings. And on this screen, this is where you actually would put in all of your information. So your company name, your email, your address, etc. Your EIN, things like that. And having that all in here is just going to make it easier at tax time. This is where you would come if you decided you wanted to change which subscription you had. So if you're like, you know what, I started out with basic, but I really want to have this additional ability to pay bills online and to receive money, you would come here and then you could upgrade to which account you want. Usage, this is where you're going to add any other users. So if you wanted to make a login for a bookkeeper that you hired to help work with you, you could create that here. And then we get into all these different little customizable options for sort of the default things. So if on invoices, if you're normally not offering net 30, but if your default you want to appear on the invoices actually net 15, you can change that here. All these different things. You can add late fees, which is really nice. So that's a great way if you're having trouble getting your customers to pay you on time, add that late fee in, and then suddenly you'll be impressed with how quickly they're able to come up with the money and actually pay you if it's going to cost them more if they're late. And it's nice is like you can customize all of that on this screen. Similarly with expenses, you can customize all the options here. This is if you want to accept money via QuickBooks. Time tracking is something you can do in here as well. That's an additional feature. So that kind of gets into the more advanced options. But this screen is where you're going to set up some other things that I wanted to just point out. So during the setup phase of QuickBooks, it's good to make sure that all of this information is correct. So most people are going to operate just on a normal calendar year. So starting on January, but if you didn't, if you had a fiscal year, this is where you would actually edit that. And you would say, you know, that the first month of the fiscal year is actually July, for example, or September. The other thing, which the default in here is accrual, and most small businesses are actually going to usually operate on a cash basis. And again, just to refer back to that other presentation by Gross Mendelson, they cover kind of the difference between cash and accrual and thinking about which one makes the most sense for your business. So, you know, if you do have any questions about which one is best, I would refer back to that one. But you want to set it here. So what that also does is it makes the default for your reports match whatever basis you use. So changing it to cash here, when you go to that reports page, now, whenever you run reports, they're going to, by default, they're going to show up as cash basis rather than as accrual basis. You can always toggle between the two, but this is going to make it like your default information. Similarly, there are, if you wanted to have in your chart of accounts, account numbers. So some people like to do that, you know, so instead of just saying rent, you want to say like rent and then like an account number next to it, you can add those things. But the other feature, the one that I think is most helpful, are these classes and locations. So say that you were a business that had 2 locations. When you turn these on, it allows you the ability to then, when you're categorizing expenses, you can add extra information. So this is where you turn them on. So again, that was that accountant settings in the menu over here on via the gear icon. And then you come down to advanced, turn on track classes and locations, and then click save. And then when we go back here to our bookkeeping tab and our bank transactions, now when I'm categorizing things, I have these extra places where I can add more information. And so, yeah, say that I have two shops and I want to be able to track expenses specific to each location so I can know how each location is doing. Here, you can set up the different locations. So say you have, you know, a 29th Street store, add that here. Now, you'll be able to differentiate the utilities that you're spending for this location versus the other one. And then you might also say that you want to have the ability to also just say general, which means, you know, you're only paying for one QuickBooks just subscription, even though you have 2 different, you know, locations. So this kind of will be added this way. The other feature that you have is this class option. And so this one I recommend for anyone that has grant funding. And if you want to be able to track your revenue and your expenses specific to a grant, this is a great place to add what that grant would be. Or similarly, if you have different projects and you want to be able to sort of track them separately, here, this is another place. So this literally, you have infinite possibilities of things that you can add, and it just gives you yet another way to make things more customizable. So let's say that you had gotten a grant and it was from Able Foundation and they gave you money. I mean, this is unrealistic, but to cover your office expenses, but you know, you wanted to categorize some things by that. And then say, we'll pretend this deposit that came in was the actual money from the Able Foundation. So they gave me $625. You use this class field to sort of track that. Oh, it's going to make us set it up. All right, so then you're adding that here. And then now when you go back to your reports and look at a profit and loss, we can now choose something like profit and loss by location. It's going slowly for some reason. All right. So now you have your report will be run in a way that can have all your different locations, general expenses and things like that, which can be really helpful as well. So then you can see them all side by side and know how much money you made at a specific location, how much you spent for a specific location. You can also use that customized feature to filter out and make it just about one of the locations. If you don't want to have the other ones in there side by side, you could say, actually, I just want to know, for the 29th Street store, what my sales were. And then the other one was that profit and loss by class. So whatever you choose to use the class feature for, similarly, it would show up here. It would say, okay, Abel gave me $625. I spent $4.23. So now I have 620 remaining. So those are some of the cool features that you have in the reporting section. So now I want to open it up for so the last thing that we didn't really have time for is reconciling accounts. I guess I should try to quickly do a run through of that, just so in case anyone wants to get to this stage. So this is a more advanced feature in QuickBooks. That's why when you come to this page, it does say experts. So a lot of times I recommend like hire a bookkeeper or hire an accountant to do some of the more in-depth stuff, which is this like account reconciliation. This is where it gets to be a lot more technical. It's easier to make mistakes, things like that. So you might do all of your day-to-day bookkeeping yourself. And then say maybe you have once a quarter or even once a year, somebody who comes in and they just reconcile everything for you before end of year, make sure everything's cleaned up. The process of reconciliation, what it is doing is basically taking your bank statement and comparing it to everything that you have recorded as transactions on the books and making sure that those two things match. So when you come here to reconcile, you can either, sign up to have QuickBooks pull in your bank statement for you, which it will then be the exact, copy of that PDF that you receive from your bank at the end of each month. And what you do to actually do the reconciliation process is you're going to pull that bank statement up. You're going to type in the ending balance and the ending date. So, if I'm reconciling August right now, say at the end of August, my bank account balance was only $300. I would type that in and I would type the date. And then you click this Start Reconciling button. And what it's going to do is now kind of do this automated process where it's going to say, okay, here's everything that you have recorded as having occurred on your books and, compare it to what the bank says. So you have what the statement says and then what actually happened in QuickBooks. And here it's telling me, no, you're wrong. So what that signifies to me is there's probably something that occurred that I haven't recorded on my books. And you would then go back to that bookkeeping page, your bank transactions, and then make sure there's nothing that's missing. And here's where it's sort of like, that's that process. If it can become more in depth and take a lot longer if it's something that occurred many months ago or something where QuickBooks didn't import that transaction for you. But I haven't added all of my transactions, of course, yet. So it's not going to be able to reconcile. But yeah, when you hear that term, like, do you have reconciled reports or reconciled financials? That's what they're referring to, is that process of actually doing that reconciliation. So, that's available here under this expert section. They do often have like a little pop-up that will display here too, that takes you to a little tutorial that QuickBooks can walk you through if you do want to do this part yourself. But yeah. What is the typical cost to have someone reconcile for you? So that is a very great question. It can be, as like a lot of places are going to charge like $200 a month, kind of like minimum. But there might be, if you're looking to just have someone do it every 3 months for you, you might be able to find someone who can do it for $200 every 3 months. I'm going to stop share here for the end. Yeah, so there's a lot of different pricing. Unfortunately, it depends on how in depth the bookkeeper is going to be. A lot of bookkeepers are going to charge anywhere from $20 to $100 an hour. It's a pretty massive range. But a lot of times minimum services are going to start at least $200 up to $600. And for that, it just depends on like what they're actually doing for you. You can usually find somebody who is going to work with you for like $500 to $600 a year if they just want to like do, the bare minimum, make sure your books are reconciled, things like that. So it's a pretty massive range. Unfortunately, there's not like a set, but so actually, I think there is like a new feature in QuickBooks where you can search through their like approved people, and that's like an option as well. Oh, wait, here's some other questions. Is there a convenient way to drill down into the transactions posted to each account and perform batch actions such as moving items to a different account? Yes. So on that screen, which I'll kind of pull, well, on that screen, on that transactions thing, on the left-hand side, there's the little check boxes, and you can select as many as you want at a time and then batch add them. So if you're like, I just want to add all my Comcast bills at once, or all of my deposits from the farmer's market at once, like you can click all of them, and then you can add them instead of saying like confirm just one by one. You can add all of them and categorize them together. Is there a further way to categorize transactions by line item, cost codes? Yep. All those things in that chart of accounts setup, in the product and services setup, you can add as much or as little detail as you want. So you can add different codes, you can add descriptions, and you can be, there's subcategories. So in that product setup page, when it says like add product, you can literally say skincare, and then below it have like lotion, shampoo, conditioner, like all the different like subcategories or something like that. And you could even then have another subcategory underneath that for like different scents or different, other sort of like ways you would want to categorize it. So you can get as detailed as you want or as not, and that's totally up to you, the amount of time you want to put into that categorization process. And similarly, say you have a deposit of $500 and you want to separate it. It's not just farmers market sales. 250 of that was farmer market sales of skincare. And say you also make ice cream, 250 of that was sales from ice cream. You can split those transactions when you're doing it and add all of that detail. So I want to be respectful of time. There's so much more to do with QuickBooks. Maybe, in the future we can do like a, advanced 2.0 or something, one of these, but yeah, let's see. So how can someone track and differentiate COGS by items sold? So I guess I can try to quickly share my screen. So by items sold, so let's see, if you wanted to, I think we talked about this a little bit once before. So on this get paid and paid. So say you're setting up your invoice, and this one we said ice cream pints. So when you're running your sales report, you're going to have all of the revenue by ice cream pints. Then similarly, you want to, this is definitely getting into like way more advanced to do like how to cost of goods sold, but basically build this stuff out on your chart of accounts first, and then categorize it based on your expenses. So once you get into more advanced cost of goods sold, you're going to actually be performing journal entries to sort of like transfer the amount that you've used each month based on sort of like inventory or number of units sold. And that's where you definitely want like an accountant, or you need a second sort of like more advanced training. But those are categories that you can like build in here as well. So having like under your cost of goods sold, maybe say like ice cream pints. So it would be the things that go into producing pints versus gallons. And then when you run a report, you could have all of the revenue that you made from ice cream pint sales, and then all of the cost of goods sold associated with, instead of saying like dairy versus dry goods, like it would be like ice cream pints. So, if you have like one specific beverage that you want to track, your like cost of goods sold for nitro cold brew and revenue from nitro cold brew, you could actually then be tracking them as your cost of goods here and name it accordingly. And then in nitro cold brew, I would put all of my supplies that went into that. So then I can be like, okay, here's what I made on nitro cold brew sales. Here's what I spent on nitro cold brew sales. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can email me. Okay. Any other final questions?
All right, y'all. If you got them, drop them in the chat.
And if I missed anybody's in the chat, please let me know. It's kind of hard trying to keep up with all of it.
All right. All right, y'all. With that, I'm going to end the recording.
Oh, and I'll have Brian send out my email address for if anybody has questions too, follow-up stuff.
Yes.